Let's be honest, when it comes to video game characters, not all are created equal. Some have better stats than others, and some are simply more interesting. However, sometimes the unassuming bench warmers in your squad may be more than they appear to be at first glance. Although they might start off forgettable, if you just give them some time to grow and develop, they can become the best and most powerful characters in your roster. Because I'm Si for WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 weak video game characters that are secretly overpowered. Number 10, Donnel, Fire Emblem Awakening. The fantasy world of Fire Emblem features mages, wyverns, Pegasus knights, and people turning into dragons. And so naturally, the most powerful character you can employ in your merry band of godlike beings is a random peasant wearing a pot for a helmet. Donnel is a character in Fire Emblem Awakening that the player can recruit if they manage to keep him alive during a bandit raid early in the game. It's easier said than done though, as Donnel can barely survive 2 enemy attacks and his spear's damage output might as well be a healing salve. Things don't get much better once Donnel officially joins your team. It takes a lot of training for him to catch up with the rest of your squad. However, once he does, he quickly becomes one of the most powerful units on your roster. Despite his initial low stats, Donnel has one of the greatest and fastest stat growths of any character in the game. This means that Donnel can outperform most of your unit before he even gets promoted to his secondary class. But best of all, Donnel never loses the dented pot on his head, even after he turns into an indestructible killing machine. Now that's commitment to the bit. Number 9, Dwight, Dragon Quest V. One of the unique features of Dragon Quest V is the ability to recruit monsters you've managed to defeat in combat. Generally speaking, the recruited enemies are pretty underwhelming and far less entertaining compared to the main cast of companions, with one exception, Dwight the White Dwarf. Dwight is a boss the player fights while visiting the Fairy Lee area. He's a delinquent thief who prevents winter from ending by stealing a magical flute from the fairies because, you know, typical fantasy nonsense. Once the player defeats Dwight, the dwarf returns to his home village, and at that point he can be recruited as a companion. Unfortunately, Dwight's stats are bad, and given that his level is significantly lower than that of your companions, most players tend to disregard him, not realising that the White Dwarf is secretly the fastest character in the game. Due to his unique power scaling, Dwight can reach his maximum level of agility faster than any other character in the title. This means he'll always have priority in battle, which combined with his ability to revive his allies and deal massive damage, makes little Dwight a huge problem for your enemies. We stan a short king. Number 8, Liara to Sony, Mass Effect. Commander Shepard's team is comprised of some of the greatest specialists in the galaxy. From military experts like Garrus to engineering geniuses like Tali, every single teammate under your command is a master in their own specific field. Now, you may think that because of this, the more intellectually gifted members may not be as useful in combat as the actual soldiers and warriors. However, all you need to do is give Liara a chance to be instantly proven wrong. Liara to Sony is an Asari researcher who Shepard recruits in the first game. Since her field of expertise is Prothean technology and not combat, she mostly acts as a support unit on the battlefield, and unlike most other characters, she cannot learn any weapon specialties. That said, Liara doesn't really need weapons, as she's actually a powerful biotic, and if you manage to get her all the way to level 60, Liara's special skill Singularity can easily wipe out waves of enemies. Best of all, the ability barely has any cooldown, so you can use it as much as you want, and you don't even have to calibrate it like you do with every rifle in the game, apparently. Isn't that right, Garrus? Number 7, Malthus, Albion. The world of Albion is a weird mix between science fiction and fantasy. In the game, you play as a spacefaring adventurer exploring a planet full of fantastical creatures with magical abilities. It's a truly odd experience filled with bizarre characters like the mysterious Malthus. Malthus is a deaf-mute Celtic druid who can only communicate with his friend Sira, an alien living on Albion. What is a Celtic druid doing on an alien planet in outer space? That's a good question, but don't question it. Because of his lack of physical power and combat spells, Malthus is objectively one of the weakest characters in the game. He's only good as a support unit, and even then his druid abilities are more situational than extremely useful. It all changes, however, once Malthus learns how to cast the Demon Exodus spell. Yes, if you don't treat him as an annoying tag-along for Sira, Malthus can actually learn a spell that allows him to instantly kill and destroy any non-human creatures. This includes some of the late-game bosses, as well as a myriad of annoying enemies that you come across outside of towns. After all, it's a well-known fact that ancient druidic rituals are lethal to alien lifeforms. Number 6, Codsworth, Fallout 4. The post-apocalyptic wasteland of Fallout 4 is a ruthless and unforgiving place. That's why you need a reliable companion that you can always count on when things get a little dicey. There are plenty of characters in the game that are willing to lend you a hand. However, if you're looking for a true powerhouse that can obliterate any enemy you come across, you need to look no further than your unseemly robotic butler Codsworth. Yes, despite being the first available companion and a simple house robot that hasn't seen combat in his over 200 years of existence, Codsworth can be secretly made into one of the strongest and most terrifying companions in the game. This is all thanks to the special robotics station that the player can unlock through the Automatron DLC. The station allows the player to create their very own robots, however, it also allows them to modify existing ones, including Codsworth. With just a few upgrades, Codsworth can be turned from a simple Mr. Handy unit into a military-grade tank with laser beams, rocket launchers and flamethrowers. But don't worry, you can still put a bowler hat on him and ask him to tell you his terrible dad jokes. Thank goodness. Number 5, Peco, Breath of Fire 3. Like many old school JRPGs, Breath of Fire 3 allows the player to recruit a whole party of powerful characters that aid them on their adventures through the world. Some can cast spells, some are great physical fighters, and one of them is a mutated onion walking on 2 pointy feet. Pecoros, or Peco for short, is a special companion that the player meets relatively late into the game. Yes, he's an onion-shaped sapling that is birthed by the wise tree Yggdrasil to allow the player to speak with it. Because Peco has literally just been born, when you meet him he starts off at level 1 and can be really difficult to use in combat, as at that stage of the game the player is likely already at level 15 or higher. However, if you decide to give Peco a chance to grow, you'll quickly discover that the little onion boy is one of the hardiest characters in Breath of Fire 3. He has insane resistance to damage, and each level gives him huge boosts to health that let him quickly outgrow any other tank in the party. In the timeless words of Shrek, onions have layers of power scaling. Number 4, Terry Hintz, Lisa the Painful. Lisa the Painful is an RPG that thrives on its players' suffering. Every fight in the game makes you question your skills, every choice mocks you for making it, and every joke is done at your expense. For this reason, when the game forces you to choose between giving up the annoying and useless tutorial companion or every single item in your inventory, you don't really expect the former option to have any real benefits. But you'd be wrong. The aptly named Terry Hintz is a party member whose speciality is giving you really obvious and or really bad advice. Aside from this, he's completely useless in a fight, as his damage never even reaches double-digit numbers. Worst of all, when you finish the tutorial, a band of raiders will force you to give up all of your items in exchange for Terry's life. So why would you decide to keep him? Because at level 25, Terry learns the most powerful skill in the game, the hottest dance. This deals 2,500 points of damage on average and can instantly kill most enemies. And yes, you have to give up a lot to teach Terry how to do it, but considering this is the same game that rewards you for climbing up a rope for 10 minutes with an actual middle finger, it's fair to say the reward is actually quite generous. Number 3, Ricky Luckens, Grand Theft Auto 5. One of the more interesting parts of the heist mechanic introduced in GTA 5 is the ability to pick out your squad for the job. Depending on who you choose, you can completely change the course of the heist, and something that the game doesn't mention explicitly, help that person improve their skills. Enter Ricky. You know, that annoying Life Invader employee that Michael comes across early in the game? Despite being too incompetent to close the pop-up ads on his own computer, Ricky becomes available as a hacker for the heist once Michael makes his previous boss lose his head. As you may expect, Ricky is pretty terrible at this job. He fails to buy you extra time during the first jewel store heist, and sometimes you even have to do his job for him. However, every time Ricky fails a task, he actually learns from his mistake and uses it to get better. By the time you do the final heist, Ricky can become so skilled that hijacking the city's traffic light system or hacking into a bank's security takes him little to no effort. His development is so impressive it also makes up for his whiny and obnoxious personality. Almost. Number 2, Magikarp, Pokémon. We can't talk about astonishing video game glow-ups without mentioning the character that's pretty much synonymous with the concept. Magikarp's transformation in the original Pokémon games from useless fishing trophy to a literal sea dragon was one of the best known secrets in the game at the time. The first fishing rod in any Pokémon you get is actually kinda useless. And in fact, this goofy guy is usually the only thing you can catch. Combine this with the fact that Magikarp only learns Tackle and Splash, a move that does absolutely nothing, most people are quick to disregard it as a terrible joke Pokémon, or even worse, a worthless waste of space. However, if you disregard the obvious drawbacks and decide to train your Magikarp all the way to level 20, the floppy fish will evolve into one of the fiercest and most powerful creatures in the original Pokémon games, Gyarados. And just in case you still weren't convinced you made the right choice, your new Sea Serpent learns how to breathe fire, which instantly kills most early level enemies shortly after its evolution. Who needs legendaries when a backyard pond fish that you got from some shady character in the Pokémon Center for far too much money can work out just as well? And number 1, Onion Knights, Final Fantasy III. While Pokémon may have popularized the concept of weak characters with hidden potential, Final Fantasy III is the title that started it. Its iconic joke class, the Onion Knight, has quite a long history within the series starting in the early 90s. The Onion Knight class is a default job that is available to the player right from the start of Final Fantasy III. Unlike other classes in the game, it's fairly weak, has no unique features, and receives minimal stat increases with each level. Even if you focus on trying to level up your Onion Knight, instead of swapping them to an immediately more powerful other class, their slow power progression makes them constantly fall behind the rest of your party members and makes them virtually useless in combat. It may seem like training an Onion Knight is a painful endeavour, and it is, but there's also a huge benefit to it. You see, when your Onion Knight reaches the lofty heights of level 92, all of their non-existent stats immediately change to the game's level cap of 99. Onion Knights are the only class that can actually reach this cap, making them the stars of any late game party. Is the sudden power surge worth hundreds of hours of grinding and frustration? Not really, but does it look cool in the character menu? Yes it does. It's amazing when a character you expected nothing from becomes something integral to your playthrough experience. Speaking of no one expecting, check out this video on screen now for 10 video game remakes that no one expected. Make sure to like this video, leave a comment down below on other examples. You can head over to WhatCulture.com for more content every day. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.